Okay, welcome. So, we are going to be going over how to increase your work capacity and how fast you're working out. Okay. So, this is going to be for athletes who tend to feel like they're strong enough to compete in the sport. They generally have pretty strong strength and Olympic lifting numbers, and they can do the skills required. But when they get hit with a workout that's typically the open style workouts where you're seeing 15-minute AMRAP where you've got to do a lot of burpees, dumbbell snatches. Like this year it was body weight, walking lunges, burpees, and hang clean and jerks. Then this is kind of how I would structure my training. Okay. First, we need to look at what work rate is. Okay. So, work rate is just how many reps you're doing every minute that transpires. Right. And so, here's an example. When we look at 23.1, we've got a 14-minute AMRAP. We're doing 60 calories of rowing, 50 toes to bar, 40 wall balls, 30 cleans. The weight on that's 135 for the men and 95 for the women, and 20 ring muscle ups. Now, you can see how work rates kind of show up here. For the men, we're looking at about 22 reps per minute was the average for kind of the top end of the leaderboard. And for women, we're looking at like 19 reps per minute. Okay. This is pretty typical for an open workout. About 20 is going to be kind of where you want to target if you're looking to be a semifinals or games athlete. You can see here other target areas, I should say, for masters athletes. This was an interesting workout because they did not scale the premium movement, which was the ring muscle ups, right? And so with them not scaling the ring muscle ups, you can see there's kind of a steady drop off in work rates across the entire leaderboard as we move up age groups. When we look at other workouts like this one, 24.3, where they do scale the premium movement, they went from chest to bar down to pull ups and from muscle ups down to chest to bar. We see this kind of drastic spike back up in work rates. So this is important because if you're a master's athlete and you are training to compete at a high level in the sport of CrossFit or functional fitness, then you need to be aware of generally how competition organizers are scaling movements and making adjustments based off of elite workouts so that you can structure your training accordingly, right? Unfortunately, it's a little bit hard to tell what they're going to come up with. Sometimes they do scale the movements and sometimes they don't. But nonetheless, you have good ideas here of what to target when you have certain movements present. So in this example, if you have ring muscle ups in a workout, you as a master's athlete would expect to be working, if you were the 55 to 59 age group, 15 reps per minute for men, right? Around there, right? If you were a 55 to 59 age group, you had chest to bar pull ups instead of muscle ups present in your training, then you would want to be working closer to that 20 reps per minute. Okay, so there's just a little bit of nuance there. You kind of have to play both sides of that if you're a master's athlete. So moving on, how do we use this work rate to structure training, right? And so generally what you want to do, a good starting point, is determine the appropriate goal for the work rate that you're looking for, right? If you are an elite man or woman, looking to get really good at open workouts and potentially make it to semifinals, then you're likely going to want to be trying to achieve about 20 reps per minute. Okay, it can be a little bit slower than that in some cases, but it's a good place to start. Okay, once you have determined what that kind of target pace is, you want to start with short intervals that will allow you to achieve that target pace, right? So the goal here is not to do the amount of volume up front. It is to expose yourself to the requisite speed and then slowly work your way up in that density of how long or once you've established a rep speed that you are comfortable with for a small amount of time, then slowly work your way up so that you're capable of sustaining that rep speed for longer periods of time. Okay. So that would be us manipulating our work rest ratios until we reach our functional volume and functional set size. So functional volume and set sizes, I'm not going to go into that too much, but it's generally patterns that we see where, if we're looking at wall balls in a workout that the open or big competition is going to put out, you could expect to see anywhere from 80 to 150 wall balls. And they're typically showing up in set sizes of like 20 to 30, right? And so that's kind of generally where we want to be in our training so that we're training appropriately for what we're going to see in competition. So Once you have reached, some interval training work where you're working with functional volume and functional set size in an interval training format, then we just want to constrain as we get closer to the competition, we want to constrain the functional volume and set size, meaning we want to keep that about the same and then gradually increase the density. So what that means is we're going to slowly increase the amount of time that we're spending at that speed and with those functional set sizes and volumes. But we're going to slowly take the rest away so that more of your working time is done working and you're spending less time resting. Okay. So here's an application that we used for Leslie when we were at the Northern California Classic. They were doing heavy Isabel. She's a master's athlete in the 50 to 54 age group when she competed here. So the first step was let's determine an appropriate work rate goal, right? And so for her, we checked the leaderboard. Semifinals online had already happened. So some of the ladies in her age group had already done heavy Isabel in their own affiliates, and their scores were posted because in affiliate semifinals was finished at this point. So based on the semifinal performances, we knew that between 4 and 6 minutes was going to be a good score, at least good enough to keep her in the top five and allow her to vie for a podium spot overall. And so, with that in mind, we knew that around 5 minutes was going to be a good target pace in our training. Okay. So we know our volume is 30 reps. We need to be able to do 30 reps, and the time is about 5 minutes. So if we use those two numbers, plug them into the formula, we're looking at 6 reps per minute, right? So for Leslie's training, the goal was let's do 6 reps per minute. And you can see here, this is her score that I have screenshotted here. On heavy Isabel, she got second on that workout. She was 5'10" overall, so kind of hit the nail right on the head. All right. Here's what her training looked like leading into this. So once the event was announced, we started to prepare for it. Some of these notes were part of a different piece that was combined. It started, and part of our framework is let's just get comfortable with how that pace feels. So I just had her start with doing 10 reps at 105. That was a prescribed weight, and we'll just see how it feels, right? And so just under 2 minutes, it's about 5 reps per minute, a little bit slower than what we were looking for, but she did have a miss in there, right? So from here, we're going to put her against a clock, right? And we're going to kind of work our way up to the total number of reps and then kind of go from there. All right. So every 15 seconds for between 12 and 15 reps, the rep range there was a guideline based on how she was feeling. She'd just do one snatch, right? So that's going to put her at about 4 reps per minute. And we'll kind of get started there and slowly increase pace from there, right? Next, so this is in order of how I just screenshotted in order of the training block. We went to every 30 seconds for 6 rounds, do between 2 and 3 snatches. So now she has the ability to take herself from doing 4 reps per minute, which would be 2 every 30 seconds, up to 6 reps per minute, which would be 3 every 30 seconds, right? And so she did that, and she did 18 reps here. Volume is increased a little bit, and then we kind of just keep pushing from there. Okay. Since she showed me that she was capable of doing 3 reps at every 30 seconds for 6 rounds, I was just let's just bump it up to 8 rounds, keep it the same. Got all 24 reps, and then bumped it to 10 for that final one. And so now we've got her hitting functional volume. She's hitting the work rate, and she's like giving me feedback that's like, hey, yeah, this feels good. Okay. From here, it's time to move on, right? And so we start to add in a little bit of density. Had her do 20 all straight through, rest a minute, and then do 10, right? I gave her some goals there so that we could be on pace for what we were hoping to hit. Okay. After she did this previous workout, I thought that 3 minutes would be a really aggressive goal, but it could be possible. When we folded the density back in, it looked like that wasn't going to be the case. But you can see that her total time there was 3:49 with the rest included, or sorry, without the rest included. So 4:49 with the rest. All right. Still a solid time, and she's still improving in her work rate there and continuing to push forward, right? Finally, we just do, 10, 8, 6. We're kind of just continuing to get the volume in. And then at this point, it's like, yeah, I feel like we're ready to go. She's finishing off at 13 reps per minute when we do the math on that. And so, yeah, from here, it's just like, let's keep pushing. Had her try the event. 5:23 was good. I think she had several misses in there. So we try it again, clean it up a little bit. She had no misses on the next attempt. And then the final attempt was like a week or two out from the competition. She's hitting 433. Okay. So you can see that first we work our way up to functional volume and achieving work rate. And then from there, we'll increase the density of the amount of work that we're doing as we progress. Okay. I try and maintain the work rate on this density piece. If I add the density in here and I start to give her work like this, and if I were to see the work rate start to fall off, then we would shorten up the set sizes and add more rest back in to achieve the right work rate, not to achieve just the volume. Okay. So here's an example of how you could do this in training for an open style workout. So if you're somebody that kind of gets gassed on those open style workouts, you struggle to hold pace, this is a good kind of like framework that you can use to get there. Okay. This first one is going to get us up to functional volume, and it's going to get us kind of like working at functional set size as well. Okay. So first thing we do is we expose ourselves to the work rate. Okay. Most people will be able to tolerate this. So you have 16-minute EMOM, and you just work 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Usually folks are okay with just working for 30 seconds. 30 seconds off is usually enough for them to recover and transition into the next movement. And so I find that that usually isn't a huge problem for people. From there, we'll just increase the volume. So when we increase the volume here, we're just adding another round. From here, we're going to increase the density and maintain the work and the rate. And so if we move to 45 seconds on, 30 seconds off, the work rest ratio gets thrown off a little bit there, right? This allows the athlete to get more wall balls done and increase the density on the wall balls. Usually that extra 15 seconds isn't going to be quite fatiguing enough for them to have a drastic fall off. Okay. And then from here, we can move on and we'll just bump them up to 60 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 12 rounds. Again, when they move on to the 1 minute pieces, this is usually for like wall balls and dumbbell snatches and burpees. This is putting them at functional volume and functional set size, right? And so if I had somebody do this workout and they're doing 3 rounds of this, if you're doing a minute straight of wall balls, usually that's between 24 and 28 reps, and it's getting 3 rounds of this. That's 80 to 90 reps, depending on how good they are at wall balls. Same thing with the dumbbell snatches, burpee box jump overs. They should be doing about 15 is the kind of benchmark pace. 15 reps per minute is quite good on burpee box jump overs. If they can maintain that in this format, that's good. And then echo bike, I would expect to see that around 15 to 20 calories for men. And so at this point, we've worked our way up from just exposing ourselves to the work rate and moving on to doing functional set size, close to functional volume for all of these movements with the required work rate. Now, if at any point I do a progression like this and I realize that the athlete is not capable of maintaining their work rate, then I just leave them there or regress them slightly. And so we will repeat the same workout until they can successfully, get the work rate that we're looking for, and then we progress from there, right? Oftentimes, if they're progressing at a little bit of a slower rate, I like to have them do it twice before to make sure that they're not a fluke that they did it. They can back it up and substantiate their results. From here, I'll switch it to a task priority. I like to do this because now we get to prescribe the actual set sizes, so it's not ambiguous anymore by being constrained by time. It's going to be determined by how fast you work, and so a little bit of math is to be done on the side of the coach. Oops, there should be a 15 seconds rest after that, like there, but maintain volume that we had here. And we're going to maintain the set sizes as well. And so, depending on the athlete and their fitness, sometimes anthropometrics come into this as well. If you have a tall athlete, um, they might be a little bit faster on wall balls. I don't find that's usually the case, but certainly for like dumbbell snatches, a shorter athlete is going to get away with going a little bit faster on a dumbbell snatch. A taller athlete's probably going to have an easier time getting echo by calories. So when I move them onto this task based here, I'm looking at their previous results, and then I'm prescribing reps that are based on their previous results. So in this instance, I'm expecting this person who is, let's be honest, they're based off of me. I would expect myself to be getting 20 to 28 reps on the wall balls in a minute, 20 to 28 on the dumbbell snatch, 15 on the burpee box jump over, and then 15 to 20 on the Echo Bike. And so I'll start off conservatively here. I don't put this in here, but I might even have them repeat this one and increase the volume just slightly. It just depends on if they're a master's athlete, if they're an elite athlete, kind of what age group and category they're sort of competing in, so that they can get the contextual um, exposure that is necessary for them. So from here, I'm going to increase the density a little bit. Okay, and so by increasing density, they're working straight through. Actually, I'll volume slightly because the density of the general fatigue is going to be higher. So um, here where they only might be working for 45 seconds at a time, this is going to take significantly longer before they get their rest interval. The volume a little bit so that it's not a huge shock to the system, and then just bring it back up. Okay. Once they're at this point, we can really start to play with density. We'll increase it so that we're doing 2 sets of 2 rounds, right? So instead of 4 rounds with a minute rest, have them go all the way through that 2 times before they get their rest. Again, and decrease rest. We can test it, right, in the 16-minute AMRAP. So again, none of this is like set in stone, and it's all being kind of adjusted based on how the athlete's performing in the progression. It's not like I would recommend doing, this through a 4-week training block, this for another 6 weeks, and then 10 weeks later, you're all of a sudden a professional at, moving fast on burpee box jump overs and dumbbell snatches. But it is kind of a good framework to move from. It's almost opposite of what you would expect to see in a standard endurance sport, where you start slow and you slowly increase pace. In this context, due to the nature of CrossFit, and how compared to cyclical sports, there's significantly more eccentric loading, more CNS fatigue due to like pretty much everything being axillarily loaded. Then for those reasons, and this is kind of a better approach I found in my experience at getting folks up into speed in their certain workouts. So again, to kind of go over this one more time, we're going to determine an appropriate work rate goal. We'll start with short intervals at the specific goal pace. From there, we're going to manipulate our work rest ratios to reach functional volume and set size. And that's within an interval training context. And then once we are working with functional volume, functional set size at race relevant paces in an interval context, then as we get closer to competition, we can start to constrain the functional volume and set size to the appropriate volumes and set sizes for the competition, and then gradually increase the density, or in other words, take away rest intervals to match the race duration. So if that means that we know we're going to see a 16-minute AMRAP in the open, it means working towards a 16-minute AMRAP like in that example. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful. Message me on Instagram or shoot me an email or something if you have any questions at all. I'd love to help you guys out with this. If you have more specific questions about your specific cases, just let me know and we'll get to training.